Welcome to the Education Insights Focus on Behavior podcast. We're here to talk about all things behavior in the world of education. We take the science of behavior and break it down for educators into easily implementable steps, and we're excited to spend some time with you. Get ready to talk through behavior, what works, what doesn't work, and how we can all improve our work in schools so we as educators can be more fulfilled and our students can be more successful.
Welcome back to Education Insights Focus on Behavior. I'm your host, Dr. Selena Layden, and I'm joined by my co-host, Daniel Irwin. Hey, Daniel.
Hello.
And Dr. Daria Loria Barston. Hey, Daria.
Hi, everyone.
We are, as always, happy to have our producer, Emily Muse. Hi, Emily.
Hello there.
So, this is another one of our special episodes of our podcast. And so, we are going to take another deep dive into one of the 7 dimensions of behavior. If you haven't listened to one of these episodes before, just to catch you up, in 1968, so we're going way back, an article was published in the first issue of the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis. That article is called Some Current Dimensions of Applied Behavior Analysis. And it really is a seminal article in our field. And it discusses the 7 dimensions. So these are applied, behavioral, analytic, technological, conceptual systems, affective, and generality. These 7 dimensions help to inform the science of behavior that we focus on. And today we are going to focus specifically on generality. So with that introduction, what are we talking about when we talk about the dimension of generality?
So I'm going to jump in if that's okay with everybody. But generality really is where the word generalized comes from, right? So what we mean by that is to make sure that we recognize that after the intervention has been proven to be effective, that the behavior is going to continue to occur, that essentially the intervention has worked, and now a person is going to engage in this behavior, in the new behavior, sustained over a period of time, under different circumstances, in different environments, and again, long after the intervention itself has been finished. And so what we are looking here, an example might be if we are looking with, I believe this is an example actually provided in the article about a student with articulation difficulty who may have resolved the issue and is now having a more fluent speech pattern, and that the intention is that this fluent speech pattern will occur in the classroom setting, not just in the classroom with a speech language pathologist, in the playground, in the home setting, in wherever the student goes. This new skill can be generalized to other places and timeframes.
Yeah, I teach this when I teach my behavior analytics students. And the example I always give, well, 2 of them I think are really relevant, but one is vending machines. So just because we teach someone how to use one particular vending machine to buy a soda, doesn't mean that they necessarily now know how to use every type of vending machine. There are some that you have to just press the button. There are some that you have to press the number and the letter combination. There are some that you press the button and it drops down. There are some that you press the button and it does this whole crazy, the thing goes up, the soda comes over. It's a whole show. How you pay can change. And so just because we've taught one example of vending machines doesn't mean that that necessarily generalizes to other vending machines. And I always joke with my students, if you're ever skeptical about this phenomenon, try asking a cell phone user to change their brand of cell phone that they use. I'm an iPhone user, and when someone hands me an Android, I don't know what to do with it because I have not generalized those skills across those exemplars.
Selena,
That's such a great example, Selena. That is very hard for me. And there's only a handful of people in my life that have not Apple phones, at least ones that I interact with. And it is really tough. We got the kids' Kindles one time, and that was a totally different ball game and very frustrating for me as a novice user of one technology that was so different than what I had built fluency on. Um, this is another thing. This is just something I think about a lot, especially in my role in schools, is really thinking about how what we're helping teachers to teach kids to do that is going to provide impact across time, right? So next year, moving into from kindergarten to first grade, moving from grade to grade, moving from classroom to classroom. This always is sort of on my mind and really thinking about how things are going to work in other environments because we're teaching them skills that can be beneficial across any number of environments and with different people and different behaviors and that kind of thing. Um, Most especially, not most especially, but primarily it's on top of at the top of my mind is those kids who are moving into secondary and really thinking about job skills and independent living skills and all those things that get taught that we don't know exactly what those environments are going to look like. And so we really have to think about how are we providing instruction and support in a way that provides enough exemplars, enough opportunity for differences so that they're more likely to be able to sort of take those tools, whether it's a visual schedule or a self-monitoring program or whatever it is, enough examples and enough different examples in enough different places with enough different people that we're pushing towards that generality into new settings, new responsibilities, new tasks, all of those things. Um, that's where my head is living right now with generality, is really thinking about the long-term success for kids.
Yeah, and Daniel, to that point, I think this is where communication between schools and families and caretakers becomes really, really important. Not that it is ever not important, right? But I think about all the times that when I was in the classroom, I would have caretakers say things like, oh, well, they can't do this at home, right? Are you sure this is my child? Because we haven't seen this at home. Or vice versa. They would tell me, oh no, they're able to do this at home, and I wouldn't see it in the classroom setting. And so by being able to talk about under what circumstances, what can we do, how can we design learning to transfer to a different environment with different people, I think that's really, really important. Because if we have our students who are able to demonstrate mastery of a skill only with us, only in our classroom setting, then I'm not sure that I would call that as completely effective, right? If it doesn't transfer, if it doesn't generalize to other settings. So I think it's an important piece for us as we're designing our instruction to purposefully, as you said, make sure that we are teaching in different ways under different circumstances, to make sure that the students are more likely to be able to generalize their behavior.
Yeah, and Daria, you and Daniel have both kind of hit on this, but I want to make sure that we make this explicit. So there's a quote from the article that I think is important. It says that generality is demonstrated when it, quote, proves durable over time if it appears in a wide variety of possible environments or if it spreads to a wide variety of related behaviors, because generalizability isn't just one of those things. There are actually different types of generalization that can occur. One is over time. So I can do it today, I can do it tomorrow, I can do it 3 years from now. Two is in a different environment. So to your point, Daria, did it happen in the classroom? Can it also happen at home? Can it also happen on the playground, in the after school program, wherever the kid may be, or the adult may be? And then three is over related behaviors. And so that was the one I was kind of hitting on, changing the context of the behaviors, but the behaviors still occurring.
Yes, Lena, and this is where I think your vending machine example is a really good one. And every time somebody shares an example like this, I always think about the sinks in the bathrooms in public places and the paper towel dispensers. Because time and time again, I had wonderful friends who maybe not have grown up in this country. And that has always been a frustration because they have explicitly said, why do the sinks not work the same way in all these public spots, right? Sometimes you have to push, sometimes you have to just put your hands under. Sometimes I think there are still behaviors that I haven't figured out what the expectation is. And so I think it's that piece of how do you teach the behavior that then can be associated with other behaviors to get to the same place, that's a really vital aspect of that. And if you haven't realized that our bathroom sinks work completely different in public settings, I bet now that's going to be in the forefront of your mind every time you go
Well,
to experience that.
and that's what I was going to say. I don't know that that's being in this country or not, because I still sometimes am like, what am I supposed to do here? So, shared experience for sure.
I mean, listen, when you travel and you go through airports, that's the one that's always really fun, right? For me, it's like, okay, what are we doing here? So,
So then I want to ask, we've talked about what generality is, and I think we've started hitting on this, but why is generalization so important? And to the point where not only is it important in that it should happen, but we should be programming for it to happen from the beginning of our of designing any intervention.
Yeah, I think it's so important because we've talked about kind of the different spaces or different arenas that someone might need to engage in a certain behavior. But I think it's really important because it sets sort of a foundation for further learning, right? And to not to get like super specific, but if I know how to communicate getting my needs met in a way that's functional, in a way that's meaningful, then I can use that skill, whether I'm at school, whether I'm at home, on the job, in the community, those kinds of things, because our and I think this is one of the challenges, especially in public schools, is that so much of the world in a public school is built around supporting kids, which is good until that level of support sort of fades out. And so we really have to think about if that level of support wasn't there, would this student be able to demonstrate this skill? If the anchor charts weren't on the wall, if the schedule wasn't telling me what time I need to be at the next place, if I wasn't walking in a line with my peers, all these little things start happening that you become used to and are the signals in your environment that are telling you what to do. But if we sort of take the next step and say, if given the opportunity to do this on their own. If that independence was kind of provided, would the student be able to do this? Would they be able to do it in the next environment? I think we start looking at where there might be some deficits. And so when we think about the generality, we don't want to have to reteach skills every time someone goes into a new environment or it's working with a new person or even is developing new academic skills, right? We want them to be able to identify what skill is needed, what knowledge is needed, apply that knowledge, and then sort of get to the place where they're at their instructional level. We want that foundation to sort of work fluently and the problem solving and all of that to generalize, waving my hands around like a crazy person, to generalize into those different situations. Hopefully, I answered the question.
Yeah, you did. I think the biggest thing for me, and this is just paraphrasing what you said, is that generality is important because at the end of the day, treatment can't go on forever. Intervention can't go on forever. We can't guarantee that that level of support will continue. And even if it could, how effective would that really be? Even if we could guarantee a person would follow you around for the rest of your life, making sure that you did this, how effective is that really? And that really doesn't produce a meaningful outcome for that individual.
so this conversation is very much reminding me of a conversation I recently had with a friend who very kindly introduced me to Khalil Gibran's poetry. And there's a really beautiful poem that talks about how the children are not our own. And it's really intended to the audience that they are talking about are the parents are the bows, right? And then the kids are the arrows. And our intention is to get them ready to then go live their own lives. And I think about that as teachers. Sometimes we are kind of in a very similar position that we want to give them all the skills. We want them to be really successful in our setting with all the support that Daniel was talking about. But what we are preparing them for, Selena, to your point, is making sure they can do those things in the real world setting without us by their sides and without the intensive supports. We do want to do that gradual release, right? And so I think that when we're designing our instruction, it's helpful for us to think about, yes, the short term interventions, but also think about that long term and think about that launch and what skills do they need to have in order to be able to perform whatever skills we're working on as independently as possible in a variety of settings. And so I think from the start, we have to design our instruction in a way that we can start removing some prompts, that we can start thinking about, well, can we actually practice the skill in different settings? Can we sometimes have a guest visitor who also can do the skill with the student, so it's not always us kind of prompting and putting the demands and providing those supports. So I think it's really challenging because it's a lot of different things to think about at the same time. But if we know that where we're going is that kind of independent performance across a variety of skills, and later on in lives, when we may or may not be in students' lives, then I think it's going to help make sure that our design of the instruction is meaningful and supportive.
And I think to that point, and we may have mentioned this before on the podcast, is the set framework for assistive technology does such a great job of helping teams kind of think through this in a kind of a systematic way, and those things that can be put in place that are supporting now, but can also help the team sort of think to the future, because it looks at the student, the environment, the task, and the tools they need. And can really help with the planning of and really thinking about generalization and giving kids the support they need that are durable over time, and durable maybe the wrong word, but are useful over time and can really think about what they look like in different environments. So just a quick plug there.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. And yes to all of what you all just said. I'm going to say one contrary piece here that I think is just a consideration. The other side of this is while generalization is really important, it may not be needed in all settings, in all contexts, across all possible opportunities. So when we're designing interventions or when we're designing teaching plans, we do want to think about, is this a skill that that individual needs across a lot of settings, or is this really specific to one setting that they just need to learn how to do it for this time period or this moment? I mean, we all have skills in our lives that we've learned at some point that we don't use later on, and that's okay. But I think the important point is how much time and effort do we spend on teaching certain things, knowing that they may not be needed across different environments or different contexts. So, with that, I think that brings us to the end of our conversation about generality. Anything to add before we sign off today?
Not for me.
Me neither.
All right. Well, good conversation about generality. I do think, just to wrap it all together, I think it's important that generality is really important to consider, not at the end. And the authors of our article do give I like the end, the way they end this section. And so it says generalization should be programmed rather than expected or lamented, meaning that if we don't think about it from the beginning, we can't just expect it to naturally happen, and we can't be sad when it doesn't. So something to consider as we are considering how to develop our interventions. So with that, thank you to my co-hosts, Daniel and Daria.
Thank you.
And as always, thank you to Emily. And we will see you, all of our listeners, on our next episode.
Thanks for listening to Education Insights Focus on Behavior. We hope you enjoyed the conversation, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can join the conversation by emailing us at cbis@odu.edu, visiting www.cbisva.org, or following us on Facebook, Instagram, X, or Blue Sky at CBISVA. Special thanks to the Virginia Department of Education for their support of this project.